My amplified unit, welcome to the Amped Up Podcast, Friday, September 8th, 2023. I have no set list in front of me, no headlines I need to go over, no big stories that I want to cover. We're just gonna go to some of the dirt sheets, see what the wrestling world is talking about, pick some of the topics, and talk about it. This is going to be one of the rarest but funnest podcasts we've ever done, man. We're just going to randomly talk some pro wrestling stories out there in the world. Sound good? I say we do that. And I'm going to try to cover the full 15th ever amplified NXT roundup from my right-hand man on the channel, JR9 Gaming. I'll try to fit that in as well, man. So that's all coming up. So I say you grab your coffees, you lock in your earbuds, you smash those ups to let BC know you're fully amplified, and we get amplified. Let's do this, man. This is actually going to be fun. We'll call today's podcast a podcast about nothing. You guys remember a few weeks ago we did a play on Seinfeld. If you guys don't know Seinfeld, it was a show created by Larry David a few decades ago, and it starred Jerry Seinfeld, and it was just a show about nothing, literally, just thoughts you would think about throughout the day, conversations you'd have with friends or coworkers, family, and then they just put all these conversations and thoughts into a half an hour sitcom. But that was popular. That was done correctly. Here we are decades later, and a few weeks ago, we had one of those Monday Night Raws that was just exceptionally boring, right? Literally nothing happened. So the next day when we did the review, the thumbnail and the headline, everything just said Raw, a show about nothing, because nothing happened. So I guess it's fitting that today's podcast we'll call a podcast about nothing, man. But it's kind of fun, actually. I'm just going to scroll through some dirt sheets and see what is actually out there headline-wise in the pro wrestling world. And this is a good way to start. Let me see this. This is Cody Rhodes confirms that Gunther and Chad Gable received a standing ovation after their Monday Night Raw main event. Pretty damn cool. Let me see the quote from Cody Rhodes. That's a good way to start the podcast off. So this is a quote from Cody Rhodes just within the last 24 hours, and I quote, "If you get a standing ovation in Gorilla, you've made it. Last night, he's talking, this was Tuesday then, more than 24 hours ago. He's talking about Monday Night Raw. This was obviously cut on Tuesday. If you get a standing ovation in Gorilla, you've made it. Last night, Chad Gable and Gunther had this amazing main event, and they came back there, and there's nothing you can do but clap for that piece of business. Chad did amazing last night, and I do hope that Chad finds the Intercontinental Championship. His daughter wanted to see that and have that moment. I felt bad because they sent me out after that to raise his hand, and I've got to do the dark match. He is an amazing athlete." So he felt bad. They sent Cody out to do a dark match, send the fans home happy because they were all disappointed from Chad Gable's loss because they built it out throughout the night perfectly on Monday night, right? They had the promo backstage. They had their new gear, their gold gear. So you really thought that Chad Gable was going all out, man. Spent money on new gear for Maxine, Otis, and Chad, all sporting the gold. Throughout the night, you're seeing the rich history and prestige of the Intercontinental title. You got the family front row of Chad Gable, and he loses. So Cody Rhodes was sent out afterwards to hold his hand up like you won something, right? A consolation prize, the adulation from the fans. But you walk away with no gold to go with your gold gear. Oh, man, that's interesting. So again, to quote Cody Rhodes, "If you get a standing ovation in Gorilla, you've made it. Monday night, Chad Gable and Gunther had this amazing main event, and they came back there, and there's nothing we could do but clap for that piece of business. A standing O for Gunther and Chad Gable. Pretty cool, man. A lot of times there's cameras backstage for those type of receptions. I'm hoping that one day in the future there's one of those WWE 24/7s documentaries that will show that, because that's pretty cool. And there's nobody more... Listen, I hate the word deserving in professional wrestling. Trust me. But there's nobody more deserving for a standing O than Chad Gable. No knock on Gunther. I'm very high on Gunther. It is amazing what he's been able to achieve. I'm glad they gave him a piece of the rocket. He's doing phenomenal. I see greater things in the future for Gunther. But Chad Gable has busted his ass for so damn long, stayed in mediocrity or in catering for so damn long, has racked up just as many L's as probably the Brooklyn Brawler by now, and yet still fans actually care about Chad Gable. He gets a damn solid reception no matter how horrible the booking may be, no matter how many L's he racks up. We still are invested in Chad Gable, and that sumbitch goes out there and gives 127% every single night, whether it's a house show, a dark match, a Monday Night Raw, a main event, a WrestleMania, or a fast lane. You're in Saudi Arabia, or you're in India doing the spectacle this week. It doesn't matter what the show is, what the time is. Chad Gable is going to go out there, and you know you're going to get 127% semod from Chad Gable. So if anybody's more deserving of a standing ovation backstage, it's not many. Very cool to hear. Anyway, look at that, man. I'm just picking topics here, headlines off of the dirt sheets, and we're amplified, man, because that's such a cool concept. Everybody giving them a standing O. And this is the main event, so that tells you something when people stick around to be in Gorilla or right out of Gorilla. Not everybody's allowed in Gorilla, but right off of Gorilla is your main corridor, right? The stairs leading up. Right there is where a lot of wrestlers will line up as well. So that tells you when people stick around, not only do they respect you enough to watch your match, but they cared enough to wait till the end for you to come back through that curtain. And that's telling you something, because after the show went off the air, Cody is telling you they stayed around another 5 to 10 minutes. Cody went out there for a dark match. He raised Gable's hand. Obviously, Gable, from what we're hearing from reports, went up to his family, stayed there for a couple minutes, made his way around the front, the whole ringside area, pretty much getting that adulation from the fans. So that's another 5 to 10 minutes up front, and they stuck around to give that standing O. Pretty cool. Salute to Chad Gable and Gunther. Let me give an actual coffee salute. Let me take a swig here, guys. Give that actual respect to Gunther and Chad Gable. All right, pretty cool. That's a good way to start the podcast about nothing today. Where else do you guys want to go here? What else do we have? All right, what's this? Wardlow. Okay, Wardlow, AEW's Wardlow. If you guys don't watch AEW, he's a homegrown talent is what we call that in New York for the Yankees. We call that homegrown talent. It's when you don't buy somebody like Alex Rodriguez from another team. Just give him a boatload of money and he comes over to the Yankees. No, it's through what we call the farm system, right? Somebody like Jason Dominguez, Derek Jeter, Jorge Posada, and many others. It's through our farm system, and we call them homegrown talent. Well, in AEW, Wardlow was somebody who did not make his name over in WWE or in Japan. He really came up in AEW, being the backbone of MJF, the Diesel to Shawn Michaels, or the Sid Justice to Shawn Michaels, basically. And Wardlow was pretty much the muscle behind MJF, and then we started to see something. Wait, Wardlow has something here, man. If you book him correctly, this guy is something special. And what happened was he became something special about 5 different times. The problem is Tony Khan absolutely butchered the booking all 5 times. It became a running joke, but it's actually depressing that we had to talk about it 5 times. But BC was very high on Wardlow so many times, and Tony Khan would just put him in catering, leave him off the show for many weeks, bring him in to flip-flop and hot potato the TNT championship. Some weird, his losses, very odd. There was one time where Wardlow, I believe this was when Punk took off, he got injured, the suspension, one of those things. But Punk was out of the equation, and they had to do a new championship, so they put together like a tournament. And Wardlow came out and said, I don't want to be a part of this tournament. I want to win the title the right way or something, so I'm going to go after the TNT championship, I think it was, right? That's when he was going for the mid-card title. And I'm like, well, wait a second. You're not going to go for the new world championship. You're going for the mid-card title? And his excuse was, because I wanna take out the real world champion the right way. It was announced beforehand that not only do you win the tournament, you become the champion in the interim, but you're the first person to take on Punk when he comes back with the real title. That was already aforementioned. So you're saying you don't want to be the first person to take on the champion, to be the real champion, but then you contradict that and say you want to be the first real champion when he comes back. It didn't make sense. It was up there with Austin Theory cashing in his Money in the Bank briefcase in the middle of a Monday Night Raw during an open challenge, by the way, for the mid-card U.S. title that he's already held 3 times previous. And he still lost the match. You can't make it up. I was boggled by that. If you want Wardlow out of the tournament, that's fine, right? You don't want him being the interim champ. You do maybe in the future want him to win the title. You got to think of a better way, because it just didn't make sense. Just like Austin Theory's whole failed cash-in on the U.S. championship during an open challenge Monday, all of that. It just doesn't make sense, right? And that's all we ask. It's those decisions. Whereas Wardlow never really rebounded from that, guys. And I wish I could tell you just 1 or 2 times they butchered him, right? And he was able to come back every time. 5 times they ruined Wardlow. And he keeps going out on these hiatuses, and he comes back. You think he's new and improved. And it's almost like it keeps getting worse. This newest innovation of Wardlow, the latest before his last hiatus, it was just horrendous. It looks like a bootleg Braun Breaker, and Braun Breaker came after Wardlow. But Braun Breaker is more of a Wardlow than Wardlow is a Wardlow. And again, this is BC talk, and I'm very high on Wardlow, or at least have been to this point. But Wardlow comes in this stupid, this beyond average, mid-AF singlet. He's got his little haircut. He's just a little goatee, I think is what he had. He could not have looked more average during his last run in AEW. And then he took off after losing again nonsensically in the weirdest, strangest of ways. He's been gone ever since, and it looks like he's about to come back. Now, this is a quote from Wardlow, all right? Now, that was the setup to get to this, because he's about to come back again for a 6th time. And Wardlow says, and I quote, "Looks like I'm gonna have to play dad when I return and teach this entire place about respect." End quote. So, strong words from Wardlow. It sounds like he's talking about the whole AEW CM Punk drama. It completely overshadowed anything that happened at All In and All Out, unfortunately. But it looks like that's exactly what he's talking about. There's so much turmoil. There's a lot of heat on the Bucks and even AEW's legal department, because people think that's what really forced Punk out. There's a lot of people upset with Tony that he allowed Punk to make it this far with all the drama. So there's so many conflicting AEW fans kind of fighting with one another. And there's heat on Jungle Boy Jack Perry now. Ryan Nemeth, head of talent relations Christopher Daniels. Ace Steel, you guys hear this? Ace Steel is once again released by AEW is the latest. I'm seeing the headline right now. Ace Steel reportedly once again released. That was the right-hand man of CM Punk, or one of them. So it's like there's people there's AEW fans that are against the Elite. There's AEW fans that are against Punk, and they're glad that he's gone. And now Wardlow is like, looks like I'm going to have to play dad when I come back and teach this entire place about respect. That tells me that he's planning on being booked very strong, whooping ass, and putting AEW in check. The problem with that is the memo has to get to Tony Khan. And unless it gets to Anthony Khan, his booking is going to be much more of the same we saw the first 5 go-arounds. Strong? then mid real quick, and then he's going to fall off the cliff even faster. And then he's going to go on hiatus. He's going to come back, rinse and repeat. We're going to repeat the process. It's a vicious cycle. I hope Wardlow comes back and everything is adjusted. You know, you got to stop getting, as much as I was an A-Rod fan, as a Yankee fan, man, you got to stop getting all of these expensive talents from other teams. Concentrate sometimes on homegrown talent from your farm system. Wardlow is somebody that your entire crowd kind of revolved around, right? And even outside casual fans kind of gravitated during that whole MJF Wardlow feud. One of the best storylines, by the way, in recent years. Not up there with the bloodline, but right underneath. I would say that is the maybe 2 or 3 best storylines of the last several years. MJF Wardlow. So that's telling you something. So, you know, if you can book him strong like that again, there's hope. But I said after the last time, that's it. Wardlow's done. I don't see how he can come back now. But I will put that thought process on the shelf, and I will, as I'm sure most people, because now is the best time more than any other to concentrate on homegrown talent, the farm system. Stop with the CM Punks or thinking you have to get all these big WWE names. There's people right there in All Elite Wrestling that are ready to shine brighter than any star previous. You just gotta let them, allow them to shine. There's gotta be that light at the end of the tunnel. The promoter cannot be blocking that light off. We'll see what Wardlow has going forward. I gotta tell you, I'm enjoying this podcast about nothing, man. Just picking out headlines and things to discuss and then just getting amplified on it. Pretty actually interesting. Where do I want to go from here? Oh, boy. Oh, LA Knight reportedly signing a new long-term WWE deal. WWE was waiting to sign him for a longer deal. They thought after the last 8 months that fans were going to stop cheering for him, and they just cheered for him even more, regardless of the shitty booking. And so finally, his deal is coming up so quickly, and they're like, uh-oh, we should probably just start to push him, right? Let's just sign the dude. So now they're going to sign him to a new deal because they're like, there's nothing we can do. We tried to leave him off pay-per-views. We left him off of Madison Square Garden SmackDown. We had him lose via Fruity Roll-Up nonstop. We've made him look ridiculous so many times, so many different ways. It's just time that we just do something with him. Let's send John Cena out there, raise his hand. Let's show that we're giving him at least a piece of this rocket. Let's sign him so nobody else can get him. And I don't know. It's one of those things where after he signs the new contract, are they going to completely derail this guy's momentum? Because this is something WWE does time and time again. Right before your contract is about to expire, or it's time for them to renew it, they'll book you kind of strong, right? They'll make you think that there's big things in the future for you. And all of a sudden, you'll sign the contract. They'll try to shut you up with the money. And they'll absolutely put you right back in there with Xavier Woods taking a fruit roll-up. Interesting, man. And also, oh boy, do I even... Bubba Ray Dudley. This is in the head. I don't know why we care about Bubba Dudley, but this is in the dirt sheet headlines. He's talking about how much longer can LA Knight truly keep up this momentum. Is there a shelf life to this reaction and response? So let's do it. Let's see what Bubba's got to say about LA Knight. Yeah. He says, I don't want to use the term one-trick pony, but if you surveyed the WWE universe and you ask them why they're so into LA Knight, they're going to talk to you about his mic skills. What are we seeing in the ring from LA Knight right now that makes us as into him as we are into him on the microphone? It's only going to last so long. That's why he needs to have more quality matches. What are you talking? Does he watch the product? It's not just the microphone, the mannerisms, the walk, the matches. His sequences are awesome, and he can wrestle. You know when he hops up onto the top rope and he delivers almost a little belly-to-belly suplex whatever that is. You know, he botched it once against Sheamus, but Sheamus is more than half to blame for that. I hate to do that because we love Sheamus, but he was so drained that by the time LA Knight hit the top rope, Sheamus did not want to go anywhere. And I think they both fell out to the outside. But 99.99% of the time, like a Clorox wipe, 99.99% of the time, this dude is hitting that move. That's athleticism. To leap onto the top rope and deliver the suplex like that, to get the height that he does on the Knight elbow, a play on the people's elbow, but the height that LA Knight, this dude's athletic. He can have good matches, and he can make you care about storylines, right? Bubba's not even talking about that. How about the fact that he captivates you in storylines? When people are saying, oh, I don't like Supernatural, basically. I know you love Bray Wyatt, basically, but I don't like the Supernatural, basically. Well, guess what LA Knight and Bray Wyatt did leading into Royal Rumble? They captivated the entire wrestling world. Even if you claim you didn't like it, the metrics, the statistics, the numbers, the ratings all showed us that it was working. And right underneath the bloodline was LA Knight and Bray Wyatt in the numbers. They were captivating everybody. And coming out of that Bray Wyatt feud, LA Knight had all the momentum in the world. And to this day, it hasn't stopped. You can thank Bray Wyatt in putting LA Knight on the map. Because before that, to most of the audience that didn't know Knight or Drake, right? You just knew him maybe as Max Dupree. Right? Even casual fans came out of that Bray Wyatt feud and said, all right, this dude is interesting. I like this. He can captivate you with storylines, man. So this dude checks off just about every box. So to say that it's just what he says on the microphone, no. In fact, he still has a long way to go on the microphone. If you really study the dude's work, he fumbles several times during his promos. He's still trying to, he overthinks things. He admits that. And he's got to just calm it down, collect yourself, right? Gain that confidence that he knows he's got. But there's many promos, he'll stumble over his words. So, again, this is just somebody who's got some steam in the business, or at least once had it, and I guess it makes headlines now when he speaks. I mean, I just wish that he watched the product more and knew what he was talking about a little bit more, because LA Knight is not super over, just because the words that he spits on a microphone. It's much more than that, and it's deeper than that. Very odd, but it is Bubba, so I guess it shouldn't be that shocking. Oh, I'm having too much fun here, man. Where else do we want? Let me get a swig of coffee, and then we'll talk. Booker T on his relationship with Punk when they were on WWE, the Fox show, backstage. How was CM Punk to work with? This should be interesting. Let me get a swig of coffee. I'm pretty sure I know what he's about to say, because everybody else talks about working with Punk the same way. That's a good coffee. All right, where do you want to go? Okay, so Booker T says, and I quote, Punk for the most part was easy to work with, but he was kind of standoffish. You know, him and I were just acquaintances. I guess we would be called in the workplace just co-workers. And we handled business, just like what you said a second ago, whoever, maybe a co-host or whoever they were talking with. Just like you said a second ago, you don't really have to like who you're working with to work with them, you know? So that's telling right there, that line, guys. Let me reread that. You don't have to like who you're working with to work with them. That's telling you right there, man. I don't even know if he realized he said that. Tell me you don't like somebody without actually saying it, right? You don't have to like who you're working with to work with them. He's telling you he just didn't like Punk. That's exactly what he's telling you. He's easy to work with, but standoffish. We were just acquaintances, and you don't have to like somebody to work with them. That's the old saying, you got to get along to go along and go along to get along. So, you know what I mean? You kind of got to just, even if you just kind of bite the tongue and just clock in, clock out. It sucks to work that way. I'm sure many of us have had jobs where you like to go to work because You got a lot of almost friends, even though they're coworkers. They're dudes that you would go and have a beer with afterwards, or hang out, go to a concert maybe. And then there was those jobs that we had where you don't really like the people you work with, and it's almost it's a chore. It's a chore to go to work. And I know, BC, it's work, man. It's a chore anyway. I get it, but it's an added level of like, damn, is it over yet? It's only hour 3. We've only been here 3 hours. It feels like I put in a 12-hour shift, because the people you work with, you just want to get away from them. You don't really have to like who you're working with to work with them, says Booker T. He goes on to say, I don't think CM Punk looked at me as one of his buddies or anything like that. I've never been one of the guys to call CM Punk on the phone, or CM Punk and I were never going to break bread together or anything like that. It's one of those deals where I understand that he understands that, and we both play our roles. So he's telling you straight up. They just... It's one of those situations on set where he was in one corner, Booker's in the other. They come together right before they're about to go live or about to record. We play our roles the best to our ability. I think on that show, I think that's what happened. He didn't get in my way. Damn. So it really was like a just stay in your corner type thing. He didn't get in my way, and I didn't get in his way. And I think that's the way it should always be when you're working in the workplace. And you just don't necessarily get along. Not bad, man. Booker T telling you exactly how it was. Like this is what we've heard from so many people in WWE's locker room, AEW's locker room. He's got a small pocket of people he confides in, and even they, over time, somehow there ends up being tension with them, like Cole Cabana and so many others. But then there's just the majority that just they don't know how to be around. He's standoffish, and it's not a good vibe, and they just rather not be around him. And that's, man... That's just, I guess that's just personality. You can't really ask Punk to change at this point. I believe he's well into his 40s, correct? Maybe not. Maybe he's just 40. I doubt very much he's still in his 30s. But, he's older now, and I think this is just his personality. And, he's kind of that loner mentality, kind of standoffish. Everybody else is to blame. I'm smarter than everyone else. What I do and say is the right way, and everybody else is the stupid. You know what I mean? Those type of people are just like that. They come across as smug because it's almost like they know better. They know more right. They are the way. And everybody else just doesn't have a clue. Everybody else is stupid. Everybody else is the problem. Everybody else is to blame. And what happens is when you start to burn one bridge after another bridge after another bridge, and then you take a stop, you take a breath, and you turn around because you actually want to work somewhere, or you want to go somewhere, you realize that, oops, I burned all the bridges because I ended up being the common denominating problem. I was the common denominator with everybody's miserable work story. It always had to do with me. Maybe if I just changed my personality just a little bit and just got along a bit more, or at least gave a few more people the chance, It's a hard thing to navigate because in many ways I have a lot of those same qualities. There's just people I just don't want to deal with. I don't have the patience. Everybody is stupid from the time I wake up to the time I go to bed. Everybody is stupid, and I feel like I have to just navigate people, getting off I'm trying to get on an elevator, and people are just like standing there clueless, and I have to be the one to go, you can get off, I don't bite. Not up front anyway. Get the fuck off so I can get on. And then everybody looks at BC like I'm wild. Like I'm a rabid fucking wild one, Oh, wow, he's yelling at us. No, I'm just telling you to get off the elevator so the process can repeat itself. I can now get on, then I can get off, somebody else can get on. If you're on the road, you're right, and it's a green light, and people are just stuck at a green light. They're the first car. Go. Green means go. It doesn't get any greener. But they're there playing on their phone, or they're just in La La Land. Hello, you're stopping traffic when it's a green light. Just fucking go. So you lay on the horn, you give them a fucking middle finger. Is it needed? I don't know. Give them a few more seconds. Maybe they'll realize it's a green light. but I'm sure many of us don't have that patience, and we just feel like everybody else is stupid and we're the right one, right? So in many ways, I get Punk's mentality. I really do. The problem, guys, is when you're doing what he does for a living and you're coming across so many people and talents, you got to put that on the shelf. You have to check yourself before you wreck yourself. You have to do it. This isn't just going into a pet store and working an 8-hour shift. You're not stocking shelves at the local grocery store or stacking plants at the local Home Depot. This is not a 9-to-5. You really have to check yourself and be a little bit more outgoing, man, and be more approachable. You just got to be more approachable because, there is a lot of these kids that probably want to learn from you or pick your brain a little bit. And, they hear the stories and they see how you are, and it's kind of like, maybe I'll go elsewhere. Somebody like Booker T, I don't understand. If you're around Booker T, man, I'm shooting the shit with him 24 as long as I can, because Booker T, and this is the stories that we've heard, but you can just tell that Booker T is this way. Just one of the coolest dudes in the world. It's Booker T. How can you not have the funnest conversations with this dude? And Punk was just standoffish, like, no thank you. My shit don't stink. And Booker T had to feel like he's not even, like he can't even have a conversations with Punk on another level. That's so weird to me, man. Booker T is amazing, but these are the stories we hear nonstop, man. I don't see, man, but Booker T telling you exactly how it was to work with CM Punk backstage during their time in WWE, or at least for the Fox show backstage. Also, you know what? What is this? Melty Boy saying that if Punk doesn't go to WWE, there's a good chance he could go back to AEW. What is this? This is a quote from Melty Boy. If WWE doesn't sign him, I wouldn't at all rule out AEW giving him another shot, as crazy as that may sound today, for those same reasons, although that would be very difficult. You think, to bring him back to AEW when it didn't work the first 17 times? He had about 3 different runs in his first run with AEW. You think it would be difficult? He says, if you draw money in this business, at one point, people will always give you a chance to do it again. Yeah, but the negatives far outweigh the positives. We talk about, so many AEW fans think that Punk was the savior, and without Punk, man, everything just falls apart. Guys, look at the ratings, man. They're not that far off. With or without Punk, it doesn't matter. AEW's main focal pointed problem is storylines. If they have really good storylines and they focus on their homegrown talent, their farm system, like the Wardlows, the Darbs, the freshly squeezed orange juices, if you do that, man, you're going to have something special. Guys, with or without Punk, do you realize that the ratings, and this is while Punk was there, by the way, they started to even keel off to 850, 875. This was when Punk was still there. But 950 is where they averaged off. They leveled off with Punk. And then they started, with Punk, they started the drop because there was no storylines and Dynamite was easily missable. And they started to drop down to 850. Now, they just recently went up to about 880, right? From 870 some odd to 880, or I think it was 868 last week to about 870, 880 something this week. So a little bit of a bump by nearly 20,000 viewers for their post All Out show. So I know it's very minuscule, but at least they're going back toward that 900,000 number. But they leveled off, even with Punk, from 850 to 950 on Dynamite. Now, if you look at Collision, guys, their debut was 800, and then with Punk, they dropped all the way to 417. Now, that was against the WWE pay-per-view SummerSlam, no question, but the point is, they went all the way back to 400, early 400,000, 417. Now, you go against stiff college football competition, you go against stiff UFC prelims, you go against stiff Stiff competition with WWE's Fastlane, or not Fastlane, that's next, Payback pay-per-view. So all of this was on Saturday, and they pulled 350, 345. So this tells you exactly what BC always told you. Punk brought in about 50 to 75,000 on a casual basis, right? Casual fan on a casual basis. I mean, meaning every casual fan didn't tune in every week just to see Punk. But about 50 to 75, you could make the argument Punk helped bring them in. Again, there's no real way to see if that's true. Maybe they did care about Kenny Omega more on this day. Maybe they cared about Darby Allin or a dinosaur, Luchasaurus. But I'll give you the benefit of the doubt and say 50 to 75,000, right? Against WWE SummerSlam, they pulled 417 on Collision. Against Payback, they pulled nearly 350. So that's right between 50 and 75, 60-some-odd thousand fans. And that's giving them the benefit of the doubt that those were all there just for Punk. So 50 to 75, you gave Punk all of that cash, millions of dollars. And it was for roughly 50 to 75,000 of differential and ratings. It was for roughly 30,000 on a buy rate. And again, we can't even give Punk the sole credit for that. But roughly 20 to 30,000 on a buy rate, which you could easily get with 2 to 3 really solid storylines. That's how you get a good buy rate on a pay-per-view. That's how you get ratings. It's not just one wrestler. It would help if they created larger-than-life characters, but they didn't even do that with Punk. Punk was more special in WWE, let's be honest, right? WWE CM Punk version was better than AEW. Tony Khan didn't know what to do with a CM Punk. That was the problem, right? You look at All In, whether he was the first match or in the middle of the card. CM Punk was going against Samoa Joe. That's not a problem to you? Supposedly, the guy who's supposed to save AEW, they made a whole show around him, Collision. And this dude is taking on an ROH guy in a rematch. They've already faced each other on Collision 2 weeks previous. They've already taken on one another. This is a rematch, and they're kicking the night off. CM Punk could have been off that show. You never would have noticed. You never would have noticed. He was not a main focal point of All In, the biggest AEW show in history. He's not involved in any good storyline when he came back. Not at all. He's fiddling around with Bullet Club Gold in this weird thing with Samoa Joe. We thought he was going to maybe come back heel, a big thing. Maybe you could turn the whole drama into semi of a storyline. You weren't going to get Hangman. You're not going to get the Elite. But maybe you could do something cool with Tony Khan and Punk and make it special. He came back. Guys, they had a 6-man tag with FTR and Bullet Club Gold. And that was it. The faces celebrated as we went off the air. And then you wonder why they lost hundreds of thousands of viewers the very next week. You really wonder? People tuned in, they said, oh, it's the same old booking of Punk. Nothing special at all. WWE, he's taking on Jonathan Cena. He's taking on The Undertaker at WrestleMania. He's in there in storylines with Paul, Triple H, Levesque McMahon. In AEW, he's taking on ROH's Samoa Joe in the first match on the card. These type of things don't help the situation. It makes Punk look very mid. It makes Punk's segments and shows look missable. And that's why, at best, I'm only giving you 50 to 75,000 that maybe he brought in. So if you just put in Punk's place, you give a good storyline like MJF and Wardlow's, you'll get 50 to 75,000 easily. Snap of a finger, blink of an eye. We've seen it in pro wrestling. Look at the Bloodline. The Bloodline, on average, when they are on their game with a good segment in that storyline, they pull in over 200,000 viewers. Extra. 200,000 plus. You tell me AEW can't pull in 50 G's by putting together another MJF Wardlow type scenario. I'm not saying you do the exact same thing, but you just have to give a storyline that people care about. That's one of the times in AEW, in their short history, where fans were so excited and actually interested to see the next week and what happens with Wardlow and MJF, and that's what you need more of. You can't just take an ex-big WWE star and just put him on your television shows in any way, in the most nonsensical, meaningless ways in matches, and think that that's going to captivate an audience. You know, many people think that Punk saw the writing on the wall and didn't want to be a part of something that was going to be such a drastic, colossal failure like Collision, because guys, they're pulling in 300 to 400. That's before the competition gets really stiff. When you have multiple really good college football games, you have really good UFC prelims, and there's a WWE Saturday Night pay-per-view. What are they going to do? You're going to pull 200,000 to 300,000 viewers at best, with or without Punk. That's what the numbers told us. Because even with Punk, they pulled in 417 against SummerSlam. Against Payback without Punk, they were about roughly 350. Punk saw this. I already said it. It could be like a Hulk Hogan situation. When WCW, the writing was on the wall and WCW was just going out of business. There was nowhere around it, man. It was done. And Hulk Hogan was trying to find any loophole possible to get fired because he knew he was going to cash in and get paid. Now, I'm sure Punk thought, if I can just get the fuck out of this place, I can get paid. But Tony Khan is saying not so fast because it was with cause. This could be going to court for a long time. And maybe Khan is not going to pay this dude. Or maybe he just wants to wash his hands with it and just say, hey, take the money, just get out. So it's like my Yankees. I always make the comparison to the Yankees because there's so much to compare. But my Yankees, they'll pay all these big stars from somebody else, somewhere else. It's like Punk coming from WWE. We'll give him a lot of money because he's already a star. Yankees do that with a lot of big players around the league. They take them from another team. They pay them a lot of money. And a lot of the times it doesn't work out and they suck. And we have to release them or trade them or just cut ties with them. But guess what? We're on the hook for all that cash. We just lost all that money and we got nothing in return. One of our pitchers just coughed up a big game last night. Carlos Rodon. Gave him a lot of money. He's been injured, and when he's not injured, he just absolutely chokes and costs us the game. And he did it again last night. My Yankees lost tragically. Just got blown out because he just let off 6 runs in the first 4 innings. So this is one of those things where just, they paid Punk a lot of money, and it just didn't work out, man. A little bit of a ratings increase. Okay, I'll give you that. A little bit more of a buy rate on a pay-per-view. I'll give you that, right? But it's not significant. It's just not. I've cracked all the numbers. And what happened, guys, is the negatives outweighed the positives. So that's all going back to what I guess the article I clicked on here with Meltzy Boy saying if he doesn't sign with WWE, I wouldn't be shocked if he does come back to AEW one day. He says because money was made, and when that happens, promoters will be more inclined to sign him again to try to make some more money. But it wasn't that much. Tony Khan told you with Punk, in his own words, that they weren't in the profit yet. They weren't actually turning a profit yet. And that was with Punk. They were just breaking even. And to this day, Tony Khan has not said he's actually making profit. Right? Getting millions of dollars from All In or having a TV rights deal, people think that equates to, oh, wow, AEW is worth all of this money. It doesn't actually mean they have that money, guys. A worth is not actually what you have. I hope that makes sense. Tony Khan explains it very good, actually. That's the one thing I will give credit to Tony Khan. He likes talking about the financial side of things, and he does break it down, and at least he's honest. They've yet to see real profit yet. If it was significant, man, no question, you got to rethink about, sometimes superstars have to be treated different. I totally agree with that, right? The prima donna Aaron Rodgers is going to be treated differently than his replacement or backup, or even our new quarterback for Green Bay, Jordan Love. You're going to treat Aaron Rodgers differently. He's a superstar, and he's got a proven track record, and he brings in the ratings, and he brings in the numbers. So if Punk was pulling in $1 million on Collision, or if he was pulling in 1.4, 1.5 on a Wednesday Night Dynamite, if he was bringing in 300,000 on a buy rate for an AEW pay-per-view, there's no question you better think twice about releasing this dude, cutting ties, terminating his contract. Sorry, Jungle Boy Jack Perry, this is Punk we're talking about. But he wasn't, guys. We live in a fantasy world where we think that Punk was bringing in all these numbers for AEW. Have you seen the numbers? Now, even though he wasn't really on Dynamite, this past Wednesday night, they went up in the ratings 20,000. They're going back toward 900,000. Collision didn't lose all that much. They were at 350 against WWE, UFC prelims, and a college football game. That's only 60,000 away from what Punk did with 417 against SummerSlam. Come on, man. You're going to bring him back? And I know Melty Boy's only saying this because he's probably hearing about it, as Jimothy Cornette would say, from the Buckaroos, Matt and Nick Jackson, right? I don't know about Tony, man. He's the type that would bring Punk back one day. But that to do what? If you ever did that, you better give a storyline that captivates the wrestling world. He better come back as a heel. You better have a Tony Khan versus CM Punk feud. You better do something epic. And I'll be on board with it. But I told you guys this once. I said it a million times. He's going to be back in WWE. Whether it's sooner or later, he will be back in WWE. He's more fit for that. Guys, the day he sat on top of that ramp and he crossed his legs Indian style and he cut that promo on WWE about the doofus son-in-law and the idiotic daughter and Vincent Kennedy McMahon and what's the problem with WWE, people like Jonathan Cena, when he cut that promo in Las Vegas, the Indies and CM Punk relationship was done. He became a bona fide superstar. There's no question about that. BC, the whole wrestling world, caught the Punk bug at that point, right? He became a superstar. In AEW and any other promotion, man, Punk was never going to truly be happy in a place like that. He started to think he deserved even more in WWE, and that's where that relationship got sour. Some people think he's right, some people not. I think for the athletic ability that Punk has and had, it wasn't that great, guys. Go back and watch Punk matches. He was not, never was. He'll probably be the first to admit, never the most athletic dude at all. If it was in terms of athleticism, he'd be the fat kid picked last in gym class. Never had the most athletic ability. And he was just never had the size. You know, you would never look at him and think, wow, he would achieve all this. But, you know, he was powerful on the microphone. And he was able to check off other boxes. And he captivated the wrestling world. But at that point, if you don't have a promoter that knows what to do with that, and unfortunately, Tony Khan does not, he was never truly going to work in AEW. And he never will. You know, a lot of you guys do not want to hear this. And I know that Paul Levesque and him don't see eye to eye. Him and Vince don't see eye to eye. But he is more suited to be in WWE. The second he became that superstar, his ego was just next level personified. His ego got amplified. And you see, that's the way he walks around now. It's the WWE mentality. And he always, I honestly believe, he's like Jim Ross, guys. And I think there's a big piece of Chris Jericho as well. Because Jericho is always bringing up WWE like Jim Ross. I think there is a big piece of them that always knows that is where I would love to be the guy. I think they look at Cody Rhodes and they go, damn, he actually did it. He went back and became the guy. And I think that eats up at people like Jericho, knowing that Vince and H are so high on certain aspects. Cody Rhodes and Triple H. He would have won that title if not for Paul Levesque putting that one last little sledgehammer into the creative, man, calling the audible and making Cody lose at Mania. But they see that they're actually, like, Cody Rhodes is making it. Cody Rhodes is doing it. Who knows if he wins it at 40 or not? But Chris Jericho sees that and goes, damn. CM Punk sees that and goes, are you kidding me? I'm the first match at All In with Samoa Joe, and Cody Rhodes is main eventing pay-per-views and WrestleManias. They're WWE guys, man. If you think Jim Ross wouldn't fucking jump at WWE sending him a contract 1 year to do commentary or something like that, Jim Ross would leave AEW in a heartbeat. You're going to see Punk eventually back in WWE. For those of you that say that Punk would never go back because they fired him on his wedding day or this and that, guys, Punk has already said he would absolutely take the call and do business with H and McMahon. He said, business is business. I'd be a fool not to. I think I'll believe Punk saying he will absolutely talk with the WWE over fans saying he would never talk with WWE. Punk told you he would. Punk showed up at a WWE event, tried to get backstage. I think he was for a little while. That's when he was already miserable with AEW. You don't think he was trying to feel it out? I think he took the Fox show with Booker T and Saraya Page and Renee Young. I think he took that job because he was trying to feel out WWE and try to get back into that world. AEW, he could have been there from day one. He told you he was not sold on the idea. He didn't like a lot of the people there, like the Bucks and many others. But when he knew that WWE was not going to give him the deal or not calling, he took the massive payday from Tony Khan. These are hard truths, man. I told you from day one this was not going to work. And when he first came, he said the right things. He had the smile on his face. And BC said, okay, I'm going to let this roll out, man. Let's let it play out. Let's see how this works out, man. Let's see if Tony can really book. Let's see if Punk is the star after 7 years that everybody claims he is still. And no, everything went off the rails pretty quickly. Goes back to what I originally said. This was never a good fit. You may not like to hear this, but CM Punk is better suited if he's going to end his wrestling career, and it's not over, in WWE. Your best bet now is to make all the money off of big matches, not first match at All In against Samoa Joe. You have CM Punk versus Sethington Rollins. Maybe you put the World Heavyweight title. Think about that, guys. CM Punk for Sethington Rollins. Set that up. And IRL, they've already taken jabs at one another. Sethington says absolutely not. He's basically a disease to the wrestling world. I mean, this is what Sethington said about Punk. So you already got a story set up. Now you just put it on the air. I'm not saying it has to be for a heavyweight championship. Imagine Roman Reigns and CM Punk if Punk is a face. What you could do with the tribal chief in CM Punk. I don't even care if it's Drew McIntyre in CM Punk. There's a lot of fun shit you could do. LA Knight versus CM Punk. Come on, bro. You know, it brings back a little bit of an exciting feeling. In AEW, it just felt like, Mox Punk. MJF and Punk again. Ricky Starks and Punk. Yay. Ooh, Samoa Joe and Punk again. You know, Kenny Omega and Punk. As high as I am on Kenny Omega, these matches don't really do anything. That's what I mean. But when I think of all these matchups in WWE, yeah, you start to think, well, that could be interesting. Now, again, I think he would be in check in WWE as well. That's one of the main focal points here, guys. It's not just, the same Punk is going to WWE, he's going to be miserable real quick. That might be the case, but if you think he's having a fight at Gorilla like he did at All In or All Out, Brawl Out, whatever you want to call it, or Brawl In, if you think he's doing that in front of Vincent Kennedy and Paul Triple H Levesque McMahon, in front of Brockton Lesnar, or whoever's there in Gorilla. If you think he's having these type of fights and Brock Lesnar isn't going to put him through a wall, or Levesque McMahon won't put him in check, McMahon won't put him in check, VKM. If you think he's going to pull those type of antics in Gorilla in WWE, you got another thing coming. He wouldn't even think of it. He knows it is much more organized. It's a much more well-oiled machine in WWE, and there's no way he's getting away with that. He can be miserable. There could be some tension. There could be a little bit of, stories breaking out about this person not liking this person. This person said something about Punk, but at the end of the day, that is legit business, and Punk is going to know that, damn, I missed this. I needed a little bit more structure. I didn't know that when I was in AEW. I found that out. So it's going to happen no matter what, guys. He's going to come back to WWE before his wrestling career is done. It's just going to happen. It's going to happen. Damn, that was almost an hour. I was just picking some headlines and just the gift to gab, man. We just started rocking out, unit. Talked a lot of things. Standing ovation with Gunther and Chad Gable, according to Cody Rhodes. We talked Booker T and how he worked with CM Punk, how it was. Melty talking about Punk's next move. Bubba talking about how long LA Knight can stay over. Wardlow putting AEW on notice. And we are going to end this podcast the right way. We are going to talk some NXT. This is a show that I'm not able to catch live every single week. And I also, it's part of that rule where if you don't collect 1 million in viewership, BC does not review that show. That's for Dynamite, Collision, Rampage, NXT. A lot of people like the show, I totally get it, but not enough for people to care about a review show afterwards. So Hopefully these shows do pull 1 million in the future and we can start reviewing them in its totality. But until that happens, my right-hand man on the channel, JR9 Gaming, has his NXT roundup. And that's usually in one of the podcasts that BC puts out after NXT Tuesday. That usually winds up in the comments and under the super thanks. So it's highlighted. BC can catch that. JR9 Gaming is my right-hand man on the channel. And here's a little fun fact. The first ever gold card that was handed out on the channel was actually to JR9 Gaming. He was the first ever channel member on this channel. So pretty cool, man. So JR9 Gaming has his 15th NXT roundup. And I say, let's do this. BC's got another 10 to 15 minutes at least. This looks like a thorough review, or report, I should say. So let's get right into it. JR9 starts off with his positives. Dragunov versus Mensa. Now, again, guys, BC did not see this show, so I am reading this for the first time. And what I do is I read a little bit of JR9's review and report. We break it down, and then BC just gives his thoughts throughout the reading. Because I read it, I contemplate it, and then I think, the creativity in that, the booking of it, how that match played out, I give my thoughts on it. So this could take a whole 10 to 15 minutes. But let's kick off with the positives. Dragunov versus Mensa had a really good match. Both have pretty strong chemistry. And, like always, Dragunov's selling was spectacular. And Mensa had probably his best showing on NXT TV. Dragunov won in the end via the Torpedo Moscow. All right, now my thoughts on this. Oh, hold on. There's a post-match activity. Post-match, Wes Lee interrupted Dragunov, saying he wants the next match with Melo and Dragunov. Response was to say he'll break Wes if he gets in his way. This brought Melo out, who announced Wes and Dragunov next week. The winner faces him at No Mercy. That match should be good, but Dragunov must win. Later on, Dragunov spoke to Trick, alluding to the idea that Trick doesn't actually believe Melo can defeat Dragunov, which could be some planted seeds that Trick will turn on Melo eventually. Okay, now hold up now. Now, what I'll say about this is, first of all, Dragunov, for those of you that don't know, or maybe you don't watch NXT, Dragunov is probably BC's top guy in all of NXT. Dragunov is not the tallest or biggest of dudes. He's the most amplified, he's the most vicious, he's the most badass. That's all I'm going to say about Dragunov. So, to see that he's taking on Wes Lee when they've been trying to build Wes Lee back up, it seems, over the past several weeks, since he's lost that North American Championship to Dominic. I don't know. JR9 Gaming sounds like you're into this matchup, but, and of course, I agree with you. Dragunov has to win. So, in effect, you're defeating Wes Lee, who started to get some momentum back in a big match he's already losing, and then Dragunov's going back to Melo. But didn't Melo already beat Dragunov? So we're going to run it back, and now Dragunov's going to win? I don't, man, a little bit of clarification maybe on that, JR9, or am I just, I believe Melo already beat Dragunov, unfortunately, because I did not want to see Dragunov lose. So now we're just throwing them right back in there. Wes Dragunov, the loser, that's a big loss. And then Dragunov versus Melo, that's a big loss for whoever loses. They just have to do this perfectly. I'll just leave it at that, I guess. And Trick Williams turning on Melo. Yeah, I mean, a lot of people thought that was going to happen at the last big event. And instead, Trick just said, I'm going to go my separate ways because everybody thinks I'm just your sidekick. I thought that was well done, by the way. So I don't see any reason for him to turn on Melo now unless they're just trying to get it out of the way while they're all on NXT before anybody gets called up to the main roster. I don't know. I have so many questions, man, on this whole situation. But as long as Dragunov has that spotlight, that's what matters. And I'm also going to comment real quick. JR9, I know you're one of those fans out there in the wrestling world, like many, that would have Dragunov defeat Gunther for the IC title. It's going to be Dragunov to take that title from Gunther. Now, as much as Jared9, you know how high I am on Dragunov and Gunther. Of course, BC would be all in for that match. No pun intended to AEW. But I would be all in for that. Dragunov versus Gunther. Imagine that. That would be better than Sheamus in Gunther, or even Drew McIntyre in Gunther. The badassery would be to an amplified level and degree. But the problem is, most of the wrestling audience, man, that they're not watching NXT, right? We'd all agree on that. That's why they're just trying to scratch and claw back to 700,000 in the rating. So all of this title reign for Gunther, and Dragunov just shows up in about a month or two, he gets the IC title? Because that's the time frame you're working with. Let's say that Dragunov gets called up around Royal Rumble. So you try to make something big out of him in 2 months with the casual fans, and then he takes it at Mania, I guess. Or does Gunther hold it through Mania while they're trying to build up Gunther? Or, I'm sorry, Dragunov. You see what I'm saying? So as much as fans like you and I, Jared9 Gaming, we would love to see Gunther and Dragunov, you got to also make the rest of the wrestling world that doesn't know a lot about Dragunov, doesn't watch the product of NXT, you got to make them believe or care about Dragunov taking the title off of somebody who's just had it for this long. He just got the record for the longest IC title reign. So, of course, I'm down with it, Jared9 Gaming, but man, you would have to do that masterfully. He needs to get to the main roster ASAP, and he needs to start making a name for himself on the main roster. That's the only way that Dragunov can take the IC title from Gunther. Or else it's never going to happen. He's not just going to show up and 2 months later he takes the title from Gunther. Man, that title reign that long, and the reaction from a lot of casual fans is going to be like, yeah, Dragon Dude. What's his name? Dragon Off? Oh, man. So, I don't know, man. I'm down with that idea. But that means eventually they got to catapult him quick to the main roster. I don't want to see him just get there and a month later he takes it. Because I want it to be very special. I want everybody to know just how badass Dragunov is when he does take a WWE main roster title. Anyway, that's interesting that they're putting him right back in there with Mello. We'll see what happens with it. Later on, hold on. So Tyler Bate, this is sticking with the positives from NXT, guys. Tyler Bate beat Dabba-Kato in a match that really showcased Bate's strength. At one point, he had Dabba in an airplane spin, which was so damn impressive with how big Dabba is. Hopefully, this begins a massive push for Tyler, who has been underutilized for a while now. Yeah, I'm pretty high on Tyler Bate as well. Every time I see Tyler Bate, I just feel like he is something above average personified. Now, on the flip side of that, Jared9, Dabba-Kato lost to Tyler Bate. Now, I'm looking at a sizable size difference. And I'm not saying that size necessarily, especially in pro wrestling matters, but Dabba-Kato losing straight up. Wow, did they give up on Dabba-Kato? I mean, that's the question BC would have, because it sounds to me if they're already having somebody like Tyler Bate, who I respect and I'm high on, but if they're having Bate simplistically in the middle of a Tuesday night show defeat the 97-foot-tall, slight exaggeration, Dabba-Kato, I believe they gave up on Dabba-Kato. Unless something happened post-match or behind the scenes, and maybe you can fill us in, Jared9 Gaming. Maybe something happened where it looks like they have something for him. But this sounds like maybe they just gave up. Because this isn't even the main roster he's taking these type of L's. This is NXT. Dabba-Kato, wow. So good for Tyler Bate. I don't know what they're doing with Dabba-Kato. Braun versus Wagner, no DQ. Was surprisingly well done with an insane post-match cliffhanger. This should be interesting. The match itself was easily Vaughn's best performance to date. At one point, Vaughn tossed Braun through the lower part of the platform NXT has ringside, and then followed it up with a really good-looking pop-up powerbomb through the announce table. Nice sequence, and I like it. Braun ended up winning via a low blow, then a spear combo, which was obviously the correct call. That did not hurt Vaughn since he gained something in defeat. That's always the plus. I always say that, Jared9, you know that. As long as you do it correctly, there's going to be victory in defeat at times. So a lot of times, if you do it correctly, you can actually walk away with an L stronger than you went into the match instead of collecting the W. So it sounds like Von did that in this match. Of course, it takes two to tango, so we have to also give credit to Braun for making Von look good. And I like that sequence, JR9 Gaming. So you have the low blow into the spear combo. That's good. You didn't tell me it was a fruit roll-up. That's a plus. Now it's post-match where things got crazy as Braun put Von's head on the lower part of the steel steps before taking the other part of the steps and delivering what was pretty much a steel step concerto to Von. That's pretty gnarly. Now we didn't see the connection, as instead NXT cut to black as he slammed. I love that. JR9, they used to do that back in the day, man. 90s. I'm talking before the Attitude Era. They would do things like that. Attitude Era as well. But I love that, man. It's too graphic, and it makes the audience know that you're on a 7-second delay, and production thought it was way too vicious to actually show the viewing audience. We didn't see the connection, as instead NXT cut to black as he slammed it down, so all we could hear was the steps landing with Vic selling it, screaming, "You son of a bitch!" They then just kept the black screen on for the last 40 seconds of the show, and all you could hear was the aftermath. Goosebumps. Absolute goosebumps, man. That is what BC loves. Like the EMTs you could hear coming in and the crowd's reaction. They sold it like Braun took out Von for good. Just a wild cliffhanger. Dude, I just got goosebumps. That's creativity. Now, I don't know if this is Michael Hicknabottom, Shawn Michaels. I don't know if this is a deal through William Regal. I don't know. This could be Norman Smiley faxing this in. But this is gold. This is absolute gold. You don't need that, right? You just get captivated. There's many people. This podcast, right? You got the black screen. You got the microphone lit up. The headphones are locked on. And you guys are listening to this. It's interesting conversation. We're having a good time shooting the shit about pro wrestling. Same thing on the actual show. You can cut to a black screen and you can still captivate your audience. The sounds, what they're hearing, that's a cliffhanger. I love that, man. I didn't get to see it, but I can just imagine it. Now I gotta actually somehow view that. That is awesome. I love that, man. A wild cliffhanger. I liked it, says JR9 Gaming, as it accomplished a few things. First, it generated momentum or a moment that people will remember. Second, Braun looked like the Beast / someone to actually fear again. That's a plus. Because lately, JR9, you know, man, they don't even know what they're doing with Braun. He shows up at Raw backstage, then he's back in NXT. He takes 4 losses in a row. So they booked him, and he looked like a beast and someone to actually fear again with how diabolical those actions were. HBK should fire Braun from NXT as a result, leading to his long-awaited call-up, as this is a perfect opportunity to do it. I love that, JR9, because it doesn't put Braun back in a match where he's got to beat another NXT talent before he goes, and he doesn't have to take another L before he goes. He just literally gets fired for his actions, and he shows up to WWE as a diabolical, I'll use that word, a vicious heel that the main roster should now have to look out for. I love that. Last point on this, Von can now be repacked as a psychotic monster due to the brutal attack. I like it. Since it plays into his real-life injury they've built up the past few months, as that was skull-related. That's right, and a few weeks ago, I do remember him really opening up about that head injury when he was younger. So, with it being alluded to that Braun smashed the same skull with steps, I can see Von coming back as a literal monster and going on a rampage. Shout out to Vic for his commentary. When it happened, he is so good and really should replace Kevin Patrick on SmackDown's commentary. Just really good stuff showing how effective cliffhangers in wrestling are. I'm down with that too, man. He's put in the work. He's been solid. If anybody deserves that spot main roster, I would absolutely give Vic at least the chance. Now the negatives. Tiffany versus Kiana's NXT title match was pointless. Tiff won in just about 6 minutes, very simplistically. I was not a fan at all, as it was way too short, and it did nothing for Kiana at all. It was just another dud match in Tiffany's reign. They need to improve her matches ASAP. Post-match, Becky Lynch appeared on the Tron, announcing it'll be Tiffany versus Becky for the NXT title in next week's main event. Now, the issue I have here is it's not No Mercy, as I have a really bad feeling Tiffany will lose the title next week, only to get it back at No Mercy in a rematch. That would just be awful hot potato, serving no purpose. Plus, we've already seen 3 title reigns this year. To add 2 more in just a few week period would be ridiculous. Yeah, JR9, I remember, I think it was just last week's, I wasn't able to recite the whole report on air, but I read that, and I believe you had alluded that you believed it was going to be No Mercy Becky Lynch versus Tiffany. So to hear that it's next week, I really do, I have to agree, I hope they don't hot potato this. It'll just devalue the title in the process, not just Tiffany and or Becky. NXT unfortunately rushed JC and Thea's dynamic in just 1 week, as now they are just a pairing without proper build. Thea beat Gigi via Kimura lock after Blair attacked Gigi behind the ref's back. So Thea is already a full-blown heel in a week. Just ridiculous. That does seem a little bit rushed. All they had to do was slowly have JC corrupt Thea in weeks of segments instead of just a blink, and they're already in a partnership. That way it would have felt more organic, as the concept of them together can work. Plus, Gigi being involved in a JC story is ridiculous, as they can't constantly be involved with each other, as that would not allow them to properly grow. Now, Ali defeated Dragon Lee via a fast-counted fruit roll-up. No, a fruit roll-up in NXT this week. Mustafa Ali defeated Dragon Lee via a fast-counted fruit roll-up by Dom, who was the referee to become the #1 contender to Dom's title. Now it makes sense. I absolutely hated this, as it was just another pointless loss for Dragon, and now we have to watch an Ali versus Dom title match. I assume at No Mercy, which is not interesting at all. So hold on. So JR9, so basically they're going to give this to Ali, are they not? I know, or the visual of the Judgment Day with all of this gold, right? Damian has a tag title and a briefcase. Balor has a tag title. Rhea Ripley has the Women's Championship. Dominic has a North American NXT Championship. Maybe Paul Levesque McMahon wants that visual still going forward. But you got to believe that when Ali went back to NXT, he was supposed to get the North American title, right? From Wes Lee. That was the original plan, you got to believe. And then they decided, no, let's have Dom go over there so he can get some title, some gold, and bring it back to the main roster. Because if they're doing Ali versus Dom, this is a way to get that eventually back to Ali. It's almost like Ali was promised this from the beginning when Dom ended up taking it. I could be absolutely wrong. Maybe you see another way of this going, JR9 Gaming. But this is a way to give it to Ali, unless they've decided, hey, this is a cool visual Judgment Day with all of this gold. Lastly, in JR9's NXT report this week, overall, another mixed bag with a couple of poor or rushed decisions, but the cliffhanger ending was executed really well, which made the feeling coming out of the show much better. So I'd rank this a 6.5 out of 10 episode. But they need to be aiming for at least 8 out of 10 each week. And that is the end of JR9 Gaming's 15th Amplified NXT Roundup. I appreciate it, JR9 Gaming. I'm glad I was able to actually recite it this week. I know last week I couldn't even get it popped up, but I read that for sure. And it gets me caught up on these NXT shows for sure, and I love talking about it during the week when I am able to. JR9 Gaming, I appreciate it, man. And that will conclude what was well over an hour, probably an hour and a half podcast. And it started off as just a podcast about nothing. And I loved it, and I hope you guys enjoyed it, man. We'll do this again, man. We're basically just starts recording, put on the live mic. We don't really have a set list. We don't have any headlines or big stories we have to talk about. We just shoot the shit and enjoy pro wrestling, man. Until next time, and there will be that next time, SmackDown tonight, so within the next 24 hours, you'll get a SmackDown review. If anything big happens with the India spectacle that WWE is putting on, Becky Lynch, I know, had some travel issues, so she was not able to go over to India, but Jonathan Cena did make the trip. He'll be tagging up with Sethington Rollins to take on Imperium. So if anything happens with that, we'll talk about that. Yeah, So more content, even though we're going into the weekend, there will be more content. Whether it's audio formatted or not, well, remains to be seen. That's it. Top guy, I'm out. BC, saying check you. Peace.